Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared, and today we are doing a quick review on the Civivi Altus, which is Civivi's new button lock. Now, they recently came out with the Civivi COGENT. I do have a full review and testing on that as well if you want to watch that. If you'd like to see the full review on the COGENT, I'm going to put a little sticker up here in the corner. You can watch the full review and testing of the Civivi COGENT button lock. Now, I started out testing this. Well, one, I wanted to test the button lock, especially because this one did get blade rock eventually, and I did have to stretch the spring to take care of that. So I wanted to see if this would end up doing the same thing and if it was kind of something that just kind of happens, which can be common with button locks, but I wanted to see especially on Civivi's knives. Now, starting it off, this comes in multiple different options. It has nitro v steel. I love nitro v steel. I did test that. We'll get into that in a second. Steel liners, G10 scales, but like I said, it does come in multiple options, like a wood variant. Deep carry, reversible clip, T8 hardware all the way around, and it's thumb stud deployment only. I mean, unless if you count using the button lock as a deployment option, but the detent on the button lock is very good, very solid, great braking action. And when I say detent, I mean what a button lock uses as a detent. It's obviously not, the typical detent like on a liner lock or frame lock, but it does create enough tension to where when you break it, it flies. It is on bearings, and since it is so smooth, it's very easy to deploy, and it does give you the perfect amount of resistance when you deploy it. When you put your finger up to the thumb stud, create tension, let it break, and then let it fly open. Now, the actual button is somewhat recessed, and you do have to mean to push it. Like if you just barely touch it, you'll get a little rock in the blade, but it won't close. You have to actually intentionally push it all the way down, and then it will close. And it is fall shut action because it is on ceramic caged bearings. Now, ergos in cutting with it and testing the steel. So first off, the ergos, it's not a large knife. It is a small knife. So having a deep carry clip on a small knife, you do feel it quite a bit in the hand. It has a little jimping on the spine, so you do lock in very well. Cutting and, the geometry of the blade is really good. It cuts very well. No issues with that. It passes through materials very nicely, and you have a good amount of leverage even though the handle isn't very big. It's kind of that happy medium size where you can still get a lot of leverage in your cuts, and it doesn't really sacrifice ergos or leverage you get in your cuts, and the geometry is really good, and it passes through really nicely. Now, the blade shape being a drop point blade, almost a spear point blade, but it is a drop point, works really good for detailing work, utility cuts, things like that. I mean, very, very good on that. So anytime or anything having to do with opening things up or carving something out or anything like that, it's going to work very, very well. Now, I was a little worried about the tip being fragile. I did test that in plywood, and it, I stabbed it multiple times. I did a little bit of cranking back and forth, and it held up just fine. Now, I don't recommend doing that. You will most likely break your tip. It is not a strong tip, but it will hold up, for light-duty puncturing tasks. But I don't recommend it, though. I did not get any chipping or anything from that. Nitro V steel is a really good steel, and it's pretty tough. It holds a good edge. It's easy to sharpen. Now, sharpening and testing the steel, like I said, I do like Nitro V quite a bit. It somewhat reminds me of 14C28N. Now, 14C28N I do prefer over Nitro V, although they are very similar in what you're going to get out of the steel. Great stainless, good edge retention, all that good stuff. Now, sharpening it sharpens up really good. Now, I put it on my VENEV resin bonded diamond stones, and I did freehand it. The original factory edge did not last very long. That was kind of one of the negative things, is the factory edge went to crap pretty quick. Maybe it had a burnt edge. Who knows, right? Maybe it was a high angle. factory edges are just that way. I don't really put too much into what the factory edge is going to do. So after I removed the factory edge and I got into some good steel and laid back the angle just a little bit, it sharpened up really good. Felt good on the stone. The steel felt really good. It deburred really fine. I took it all the way to 3/2 micron, and Nitro V does take a good polish. It holds its bite very well. You can use it. You can sharpen it at low angles and get a really, really fine, acute edge, and it will still hold its bite very well, even with a good polishing, which is nice because that is something I really love in the steels that I love, especially when we're talking about, like what kind of steels I prefer. Now, the clipping carry, it works just fine. It's a budget clip, no issues. It's not inset, which I would prefer it to be, but it does work just fine. In and out of the pocket, carries really good. It's not a large knife. Now don't forget, guys, I always try to link everything I can down in the description, whether that's Amazon links, affiliate links, discount codes, whatever I can down in the description. So don't forget to check that out. Some negative things really quick. One, the grind, and I always praise Civivi for having amazing grinds on their knives. I always praise them for that, but as of recently, I've noticed there's been a couple occasions or a couple knives I've gotten where the grinds were not even on both sides. And, is it that big of a deal? No, not really, but it's something that I've always praised Civivi/We for. Now, I usually see their grinds, and I'm starting to notice something, that their hollow grinds are usually more even than their flat grinds. So it seems, and I'm not 100% on this, but it seems that you're more likely to get a very even grind from one side to the other from their hollow grinds, more so than their flat grinds. But like I said, it's not that big of a deal, and it's fine. It's just one side and one point is a little bit thicker than the other side. Now, the sharpening choil, I'm starting to get upset at them because they've been very good in the past with doing really good sharpening choils. And as of recently, they've kind of been missing that ball. Now they did not give you a plunge, or they did not give you a sharpening choil. They just basically dropped the plunge to the edge. Now, it is a little bit separated, so you are going to be able to get a couple good edges on it, at least one good sharpening, depending on how low you put the angle. But you're not going to get much more than that before you start hitting the plunge grind. You can see I already nicked it right there. Which, is it that big of a deal? No, but you prefer it. You want your edge to look really good. You don't want to see a smile. You don't want to hit your stones with your plunge grind. So that's something I definitely prefer. Now, this is kind of just, a budget work knife sort of thing. But still, though, you want to appreciate those little details that Civivi's always done. And it just seems like they're skipping that. Now, I know in the past they have definitely not done that also. But they've had a pretty good reputation with doing good plunge grinds and good sharpening choils. Lockup. Lockup's been super solid. No rock, no blade play, no nothing. So I've been very happy with that because, like I said, I was concerned if it was going to be just a normal thing with Civivi's button locks of whether or not they were going to eventually get blade rock, and meaning like that eventually when you go like this, you can feel the blade moving back and forth, up and down, not side to side, but up and down, and nothing. It's solid. I don't have any stick. I can definitely feel my button is locked up very solid in there, because a button lock, you can see how that plunge goes right into that groove. The geometry is really good. Now, if you do wind up getting some stick, a little bit of stick is not necessarily a bad thing with a button lock, because it ensures that the plunge is securely tucked in there. Now, eventually that should break in, but if the button lock gets really smooth, that's when you're going to start noticing that you might have the potential, not saying it's going to happen, but the potential of getting blade rock. So I don't ever mind just a little tiny bit of stick or snugness, you know, where the button is snug behind the blade. But mine's good. Mine's super solid. No stick at all. Now, like I said, for negative things, the clip, it's definitely in my hand. I definitely feel it a lot. Like a lot. You can see right there, it really gets me. So it's not that big of a deal with this size of a knife because I mostly use it like this. You know, I'm usually not really holding it like this too much. Now I have, and in that case, I just get myself a little closer to the blade and I don't feel it too bad. So I do have a tiny bit of room to get around this little hump. If they would have inset the clip, I think it would have helped a little bit, but not that much. As far as negative things, that's really it. It's actually been a very solid knife, a solid user. I can absolutely recommend it. I think if you are asking yourself which one's better, which one should I get between the Altus and the COGENT, I think you should answer a question, do you like flipper tabs or button locks better? And then which size do you prefer? If you prefer a smaller knife, you're definitely going to want the Altus. If you prefer a larger knife, obviously the COGENT. If you like button or flipper tab, because this is also another well-tuned detent. I think both of them are fantastic knives. I do like both of them. Now, they're not going to be hard-use knives. I have done some spine whack tests on them. Nothing too crazy, and they hold up just fine, but I wouldn't be out batoning with them or anything like that. So, there you guys go. I love you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.